The courtroom is packed with tension, an energy that feels almost palpable as the heavy oak doors swing open. The air is thick, saturated with a low murmur of whispers, the rustling of papers, and the squeak of chairs as the spectators settle into their seats. In the front, the judge's bench stands elevated, a symbol of authority and power, and today, it feels especially oppressive. The harsh fluorescent lights above only add to the coldness of the room, casting shadows that stretch across the marble floors. At the center of this tense atmosphere is Karoline Leavitt, a young but determined figure who has come to challenge the very system that's meant to uphold justice. She sits confidently at the defendant's table, her posture straight, her gaze focused. She's dressed in a sharp suit, the kind of attire that exudes professionalism and control. Her mind is sharp, her every move calculated, yet there's a calmness about her that suggests she knows exactly what she's up against. Across the room, behind the judge's bench, sits Judge Harold Grayson, a man whose reputation precedes him in the worst of ways. With decades of service, he's known for his biased rulings, his rumored ties to under-the-table deals, and his ability to manipulate the system to serve his interests. His wrinkled face is framed by a set of glasses perched precariously on the tip of his nose. His eyes, however, reveal a sharpness that belies his graying hair and sagging features, a man who's learned to wield power with a sneer rather than a fair hand. The case at hand has been bubbling for weeks, gaining attention from media outlets and activists alike. Karoline's team has been building a case against Grayson for his unethical rulings in past cases, rulings that have left many feeling the brunt of injustice. Today, Karoline is prepared to make her stand, but little does she know, the battle she's about to face won't just be legal. It will be deeply personal, and it will test her resolve in ways she never expected. As the courtroom settles, the judge calls the case to order, his voice gravelly, laced with authority. Grayson's words are clipped, his tone dismissive as he glares down at Karoline, almost daring her to challenge him. Karoline doesn't flinch. She remains poised, knowing that what happens here today will echo far beyond these walls. But she can already feel the storm brewing, the tension thickening around them like the stillness before a thunderstrike. The clash between Karoline and Grayson is about to begin. The stakes couldn't be higher. The judge clears his throat, a loud, deliberate sound that seems to reverberate through the room. His eyes, cold and calculating, lock onto Karoline. It's not just the case he's focused on. It's her, the young, ambitious attorney who dares to challenge him. Grayson leans forward slightly, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the edge of his desk as he speaks in a voice that oozes condescension. Ms. Leavitt, he begins, dragging her name out slowly, as if savoring every syllable. I trust you understand the severity of your position here. You've been stirring up quite a bit of noise lately, but today you'll find the court is not your ally. You do well to remember your place. The words hit Karoline like a slap across the face, but she doesn't show it. Her gaze doesn't waver from the judge, and her jaw clenches ever so slightly. She's prepared for this, for the arrogance and condescension that often comes with those who wield power unjustly. But this is personal. Your Honor, Karoline replies, her voice calm and measured, though the undercurrent of resolve is unmistakable. I'm here to ensure the truth is heard. And I trust you'll do your duty as a judge to remain impartial, no matter the nature of the case or the people involved. The room grows quiet, the tension escalating as the exchange unfolds. Grayson, for a moment, narrows his eyes, his nostrils flaring in indignation. Karoline's words cut deep, exposing his weaknesses in front of everyone. He's used to silence, used to having people back down in the face of his authority. But not this time. Well, Grayson sneers, clearly irritated by her defiance. We'll see how well your truth fares in the real world, Ms. Leavitt. This court has no time for idealistic nonsense. Karoline doesn't flinch. She rises from her seat, taking a single, deliberate step toward the judge's bench. The silence in the room thickens as the onlookers shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the rising heat between the two. Your Honor, she says, her voice now steady and unwavering. It's not idealistic nonsense. It's justice. Something that seems to have been missing from this court for far too long. A ripple of murmurs runs through the room, but Grayson's scowl deepens. His fingers grip the gavel, but before he can make a retort, he pauses. Something in Karoline's words has struck a nerve. He leans back in his chair, attempting to regain control of the room, his voice now dripping with sarcasm. Justice, he scoffs. What do you know of justice, Ms. Leavitt? You've barely been practicing law long enough to know how this system works. I know enough to recognize when it's being abused. Karoline fires back, her tone unyielding. And I'm not afraid to stand up to it, even if it's coming from someone in your position. The courtroom falls into a heavy silence as Karoline's words hang in the air, like a challenge thrown down at Grayson's feet. The judge's eyes flare with a mixture of anger and contempt. The room seems to shrink around them, the tension palpable. Grayson finally slams his gavel down with a loud crack. Enough, he barks. I will not tolerate this insolence in my courtroom. But Karoline doesn't back down. She stands her ground, every inch of her exuding confidence. This isn't just about winning a case anymore. It's about standing up for what's right, and she knows it. The weight of what she's doing is enormous, but she doesn't falter. Your Honor, she says, voice firm, you made it clear where you stand, and now it's my turn to make it clear where I stand. Grayson's face flushes with rage, but there's a dangerous calm in Karoline's eyes. The exchange may have started with words, but it's clear that the stakes have just been raised. The battle for justice has begun, and Grayson's once unquestioned authority is now on the line. Judge Grayson's fury boils over as he glares down at Karoline, his veins popping from his neck. The way of the power he once took for granted is slipping through his fingers, and it sends a surge of panic through him. He leans forward, his hands gripping the bench so tightly his knuckles turn white. You're walking a very fine line, Ms. Leavitt, he sneers, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. I've tolerated your behavior long enough. If you think you can waltz in here and talk to me like that, you've clearly misjudged your position. Karoline holds his gaze with an intensity that's unshakable. She's not intimidated, not one bit. She's seen this before, judges who use their position to assert dominance, who assume their power is untouchable. But she knows the truth. It's not the power that commands respect, it's the integrity of those who hold it. I haven't misjudged anything, Your Honor, she replies coolly, stepping closer to the bench. Her voice, though calm, carries a fierce edge. It's you who have misjudged this courtroom. You've allowed your position to corrupt you, and now you're using it to intimidate those who seek justice. And I won't stand for it. A murmur ripples through the courtroom as those who were silently watching begin to take notice. This exchange is no longer just a war of words. It's a battle for the very soul of the court. Grayson's face darkens with each passing second, his eyes narrowing into slits, as if he's considering how best to crush her with his authority. But Karoline doesn't flinch. She presses on, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. You may think your position grants you the right to disrespect me or anyone else in this room, but it doesn't. Power should never be used to silence those who stand up for the truth. And that's exactly what I'm doing here, standing up for the truth. The silence in the room is deafening. No one dares to move or speak. They're all waiting, wondering if this is the moment when Grayson will finally snap and use his power to retaliate. Grayson's fist slams down onto the desk, a deafening crack that makes everyone jump. His voice is low, threatening, and filled with venom. You don't know who you're dealing with, Ms. Leavitt. I've spent decades in this courtroom. I've seen lawyers come and go, but none of them have dared to challenge me like this. Do you really think you can win this battle? Do you honestly believe the system will side with you over me? For a brief moment, it feels as though Grayson has regained the upper hand. His voice is strong, and his presence commands the room. But Karoline is undeterred. She stands her ground, her expression unwavering. I don't need the system to side with me, Your Honor. I just need the truth to come out. And that's something even you can't stop. Grayson's face twists with fury, and he stands up abruptly, knocking his chair back as he towers over Karoline. For a moment, the entire courtroom holds its breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion of his rage. But Karoline remains unfazed. Her posture is calm, her stance unyielding. This is her moment. She's made her stand, and now she's waiting to see if Grayson will try to push her further. Grayson glares at her with a fury that burns in his eyes, his chest heaving with anger. He takes a step toward her, his voice dripping with disdain. You made a grave mistake, Ms. Leavitt, and I'll make sure you regret it. As he speaks, he reaches for the gavel again, his fingers trembling with rage. The weight of his next decision is monumental. He could easily use his authority to throw her out of the courtroom, to silence her once and for all. But something in Karoline's unwavering confidence stirs something deep within him. He knows that she won't back down. She has made it clear she's willing to fight, and that terrifies him. In that moment, something cracks in Grayson's mind. He's so used to having the upper hand, to intimidating those around him with his power, that he doesn't know how to handle someone who refuses to be cowed. Karoline's challenge has forced him to confront something he's never had to face before: vulnerability. And it's a feeling he cannot stand. The tension is unbearable. The room seems to shrink as Grayson, eyes burning with a mix of anger and fear, takes one final step forward, the distance between him and Karoline now almost non-existent. "You want the truth, Ms. Leavitt?" He spits, his voice barely a whisper now. "You'll get it." And with those words, the courtroom holds its breath, the weight of the situation teetering on the edge of chaos. The tension is palpable, and everyone knows that this is the moment where everything changes. Grayson may have been in control up until now, but Karoline Leavitt is about to turn the tables. Judge Grayson stands in front of Karoline, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. His grip on the gavel tightens, the wood creaking under the pressure as his knuckles whiten. The entire room is frozen in time, each second stretching longer than the last as Grayson contemplates his next move. The tension is suffocating. "Do you really think you're untouchable, Ms. Leavitt?" Grayson snarls, his voice shaking with fury. "You are in my courtroom. I run this show, and you will respect that." Before he can finish his sentence, Karoline interrupts, her calm voice cutting through his rage like a knife. "Respect isn't given, Your Honor. It's earned. And you've long lost mine." The words land like a blow to Grayson's ego, and for a split second, something in his demeanor cracks. His eyes flicker with a hint of uncertainty, but he quickly suppresses it, replacing it with a mask of disdain. He can't let her see that she's gotten under his skin. His pride is all he has left in this moment. "Enough!" Grayson shouts, his face now crimson. He slams the gavel onto the desk with so much force it echoes through the courtroom, causing some to flinch. His voice grows more menacing. "You will not speak to me like that. You're out of line, and I'll have you removed if necessary." The courtroom is on edge, watching this dangerous power struggle unfold. Karoline, however, remains unshaken. The eyes of the room are on her now, and she knows what she's up against. She stands tall, unfaltering, knowing that whatever happens next will define this battle for justice. "Go ahead," Karoline says, her voice steady and defiant. "You can throw me out of here, but that won't change the truth. It's already out there, and I'm not the only one who knows what you've been doing. People are watching." Grayson's face twists further, his anger rising to a boiling point. His eyes narrow, burning with an intensity that threatens to explode. He's used to being in control, and Karoline's refusal to bow before him has pushed him to the edge of his tolerance. "You think you're some kind of hero, don't you?" Grayson sneers. "Well, let me make one thing clear. Heroes don't last long in my court. And neither will you." His words hang heavy in the air, and as he reaches for the gavel once again, the energy in the room shifts. It's no longer just about words. It's about power, control, and who will ultimately prevail. The exchange has become a battle of wills, and both sides know it's only a matter of time before one of them breaks. But just as Grayson is about to bring the gavel down with a swift final motion, something unexpected happens. The door to the courtroom opens. The tension that has been building to a crescendo is suddenly shattered by the arrival of an officer, one of Grayson's own. His presence is like a jolt of electricity, and everyone in the room turns to look at him, their collective breath held. Grayson freezes, his hand hovering above the gavel. His face flickers with confusion before a trace of recognition crosses his features. The officer steps forward, approaching the bench with a level of authority that even Grayson can't ignore. "Judge Grayson," the officer begins, his voice steady but firm, "you're under arrest." The words strike the room like a thunderclap. No one moves or speaks, as the weight of the moment settles over them. Grayson, once the undisputed ruler of the courtroom, is now the one facing the law. The very power he used to control others has been turned against him. "Excuse me?" Grayson sputters, his voice cracking as he stumbles back from the bench. "What are you talking about? This is a mistake." But the officer doesn't waver. His eyes are unwavering, and his posture is unyielding. "It's no mistake, Judge," the officer replies calmly. "We've received credible evidence of your misconduct, and you're being taken into custody." Karoline, still standing with her back straight, watches the scene unfold before her. Her pulse quickens, but she doesn't show it. The justice she has fought for, the courage to stand up to the corruption, is finally taking shape. Grayson stumbles backward in shock, his hand reaching for the bench for support. His words spill out in a mixture of disbelief and fury. You can't do this. I've been on the bench for years. I'm untouchable. You can't arrest me. The officer doesn't respond to Grayson's outbursts. He calmly moves forward, placing a pair of handcuffs around the judge's wrists, locking them in place with a quiet click that seems to reverberate through the room. Grayson's resistance is futile. He is no longer the man who once held absolute power over this courtroom. As the officer leads Grayson away, his face pale with fear and humiliation, the courtroom remains silent for a long moment. The gravity of the situation has yet to fully sink in. Karoline stands tall, heart racing with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. She's done it. She's exposed the corruption, and she's seen it fall before her very eyes. The officer escorts Grayson out of the courtroom, and the doors close behind them with a finality that leaves everyone in stunned silence. And just like that, Judge Grayson, the man who once wielded unchallenged power, finds himself a prisoner of the very system he thought he controlled. The moment the courtroom doors close behind Judge Grayson, a ripple of energy sweeps through the room. What had begun as a tense exchange between an arrogant, corrupt judge and a defiant attorney has now escalated into a full-blown scandal. The legal world is on edge, and Karoline Leavitt, once an unknown player, is suddenly thrust into the spotlight as a beacon of justice and integrity. With the immediate threat gone, the courtroom empties out. Karoline steps into the hallway, her mind racing with the significance of what just transpired. She had always known that something had to be done to stop Judge Grayson, but never in her wildest dreams did she expect it to play out like this. Karoline's assistant, Olivia, hurries up to her, her face filled with excitement and concern. Karoline, Olivia says breathlessly, the press is going crazy. They want an interview, and they want it now. The world needs to hear your side of the story. Karoline nods, still processing everything. She knows she can't escape the media storm. It's already begun. The eyes of the world are on her now. There's no turning back. I'll do it, Karoline says. But I need to make sure I say this right. Olivia gives a quick nod, and the two of them walk toward the makeshift press area set up just outside the courthouse. Reporters from all over have gathered, cameras poised and microphones in hand, eager to get the first exclusive interview with the woman who took down one of the most powerful judges in the state. Karoline steps in front of the press, her tall, poised frame giving her an air of confidence that she didn't have when she walked into that courtroom hours earlier. She clears her throat and adjusts the collar of her suit before speaking. Thank you all for being here, Karoline begins, her voice steady, though she feels the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Today, I took a stand. A stand not just for myself, but for every person who has ever been mistreated by a corrupt system. Judge Grayson's behavior in that courtroom today wasn't just about me. It was about the system he represented, a system that allows powerful figures like him to manipulate the law for their own gain. The reporters lean in, cameras flashing as they record every word. Karoline can feel the gravity of the moment, knowing that every word she speaks could make or break the impact of her fight. But this isn't just about one man, she continues. This is about a system that too often lets individuals like him get away with their abuse of power. Today, I didn't just expose his wrongdoings. I made sure that he is held accountable. I did what every citizen in this country should have a right to do. Stand up to those who think they're above the law. A murmur ripples through the crowd, and a reporter quickly raises their hand. Ms. Leavitt, what do you expect to happen next? What's the next step in this case? Will you be pushing for further charges against Judge Grayson? Karoline nods, her gaze firm and unyielding. I will make sure that this doesn't end here, she says, her voice unwavering. The investigation is ongoing, and I will be doing everything in my power to ensure that he is held accountable for his actions, not just in the courtroom, but for corruption he has caused throughout the legal system. This is only the beginning. Another reporter presses in, voice tinged with skepticism. Do you think this move will be enough to restore public trust in the justice system? There are many who believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg and that other corrupt figures may still be in positions of power. How will you address that? Karoline's expression doesn't falter. She's ready for the hard questions. This isn't about restoring trust in the system, she answers, her voice calm but fierce. This is about making sure the system is held accountable. We need to root out corruption wherever it lies, and we need to do it systematically. The truth is, it's going to take more than one arrest to fix this. But what happened today shows that no one is above the law, not even someone who thinks they can control it. The reporters exchange looks, scribbling down notes furiously. The camera flashes continue, the energy in the air thick with anticipation. Karoline pauses, letting her words sink in before delivering the final, powerful message. Judge Grayson thought he could intimidate me, belittle me, control me. But what he didn't count on was that I'm not afraid. I'm not backing down. And I'm not the only one. There are more people like me, and we're ready to fight. The people will have their voices heard. And corrupt officials, no matter how high up they are, will be held accountable. As she finishes, heavy silence fills the air. It's clear that Karoline's words have resonated. She's not just an attorney anymore. She's a symbol of resistance, of justice, and of hope. The reporters now view her as the face of a new movement, one that challenges the very foundation of corruption that has pervaded the legal system for far too long. Karoline stands tall in front of the flashing cameras, knowing that this moment will be remembered for years to come. She has just begun to fight a battle that could change the course of the legal system, and perhaps the entire country forever. In the hours that follow Karoline's explosive press conference, the story of her confrontation with Judge Grayson spreads like wildfire. News outlets across the country replay the footage of Karoline's passionate speech, analyzing every word, every gesture. Some hail her as a hero, while others question whether her bold move will cause more harm than good. But what Karoline doesn't expect is the overwhelming support she begins to receive online. Social media platforms explode with hashtags like #JusticeForCaroline and #CorruptJudgeExposed. From ordinary citizens to high-profile influencers, everyone is talking about her stand against the corrupt legal system. The once unknown attorney has become the face of a national movement, one that calls for transparency, fairness, and accountability in a system that many believe has failed them. As Karoline scrolls through her social media accounts late that night, her heart swells with pride. Messages flood her inbox, most of them from strangers who share stories of their own experiences with corrupt judges and rigged courts. People are speaking out, finally. And it's clear that Karoline's courage has ignited something far bigger than herself. One message, in particular, catches her eye. It's from a user named Justice for All, who writes, "Karoline, you are the voice of all of us who have been silenced for far too long. I've been fighting against a corrupt judge in my town for years, and I've been ignored at every turn. Your actions today gave me the courage to speak out. You've sparked a revolution, and we're right behind you." The words bring tears to Karoline's eyes. She knows this isn't just about her anymore. It's about a collective awakening, a shift in the public's mindset about what the justice system should stand for. People are done tolerating injustice. They want change, and Karoline has become the catalyst. As the night drags on, Karoline finds herself fielding phone calls from prominent legal figures and even political leaders. Some want to offer their support. Others want to strategize how to use her momentum to push for systemic change. But Karoline knows that now, more than ever, she must stay focused on the bigger picture. She can't let the flood of attention distract her from the goal, holding Judge Grayson accountable and cleaning up the entire legal system. The next morning, as Karoline prepares for another round of interviews, she's approached by her assistant, Olivia, with some unexpected news. "There's a petition going viral right now," Olivia says, her face a mix of disbelief and excitement. "It's calling for Grayson's immediate removal from the bench. Over 1 million signatures in less than 24 hours. Karoline's eyes widen in shock. 1 million, she repeats. "I never expected something like this. It's overwhelming." "It's more than overwhelming," Olivia responds. "This is what we've been waiting for." This is the people's voice speaking out. As they sit down to strategize for the next step, Karoline begins to realize the magnitude of what's happening. This isn't just a courtroom drama anymore. This is a political earthquake, and she's right in the epicenter of it. The petition, the media coverage, the support, it's all converging into something far more powerful than she ever imagined. By the end of the week, the pressure mounts on Judge Grayson. The calls for his resignation grow louder, and a special investigation is launched into his conduct. Grayson, who once held power and authority over his courtroom with an iron fist, now finds himself at the center of a scandal that could end his career. But Karoline knows that this is only the beginning. She can't afford to get complacent. As the media attention continues to escalate, she begins preparing for the next phase of the battle, the legal fight to ensure that Grayson faces justice. She knows that this will be a long and arduous road, but the support of the public keeps her going. The voices of the people, who have spent years silently suffering under a corrupt system, are now louder than ever. And Karoline is determined to make sure those voices are heard, no matter what it takes. Despite the growing support and the public outcry, Judge Grayson isn't backing down. As the investigation into his conduct intensifies, he begins using his connections and influence to fight back. The legal establishment, which has been complicit in covering up judicial misconduct for years, closes ranks around him. Grayson hires a high-powered legal team with political ties, aiming to discredit Karoline and undermine the accusations against him. Behind closed doors, Grayson's allies attempt to pressure the investigations committee. Rumors swirl that Grayson's supporters are working to plant false information, intending to frame Karoline for unethical behavior. The pressure on Karoline increases as anonymous calls and threats flood her phone. She receives ominous emails warning her to drop the case or face ruin. Karoline's heart races as she reads one of the emails, which says, "If you think you're a hero, think again. Your career and life will be destroyed before this is over." But instead of retreating, Karoline steels herself. She understands that this is the moment when many would crumble, but she's not just fighting for herself. She's fighting for every person who's been wronged by a corrupt system, and she won't let anyone intimidate her into silence. Olivia, her assistant, notices the strain in Karoline's face. "They're trying to break you, Karoline," she says, her voice filled with concern. "You've got to be careful. This is more than just a court battle now. It's personal for them." "No," Karoline replies, her voice firm. "But I won't let them win. We have a duty to expose this, and we're going to follow through, no matter what." The tide begins to turn in Karoline's favor once again, as the petition calling for Grayson's removal grows to unprecedented numbers. Local protests break out outside courtrooms across the country, with citizens holding signs that read, "No justice, no peace, and corruption can't hide forever." The public's discontent is palpable, and the story becomes a focal point in the fight for reform in the judicial system. The media amplifies Karoline's every move. The more Grayson's team tries to discredit her, the more it backfires. She's seen as the underdog, an attorney taking on the judicial establishment, and the public loves an underdog. News outlets praise her for her resilience and determination. Her social media following explodes, and with each new interview, Karoline's message of justice becomes clearer. No one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. But the political ramifications are starting to show. Senior officials in the judicial system, who once defended Grayson, are now being forced to take a hard look at the corruption within their own ranks. While some choose to remain silent or neutral, others begin to speak out against the system that enabled Grayson's behavior. Karoline is invited to speak at conferences, panels, and even political rallies. She becomes the voice for a broader movement, advocating for transparency, judicial accountability, and the elimination of political influence from the legal system. Her speeches resonate with many who've been victimized by the same kind of corruption. Despite his attempts to fight back, the truth is undeniable. New evidence is uncovered, including damning recordings of Grayson making inappropriate comments to attorneys and manipulating cases in his favor. Investigators find links between Grayson's rulings and donations from special interest groups, further cementing his corrupt practices. Finally, the legal system can no longer ignore the truth. Judge Grayson is suspended from his position pending a full investigation. His removal from the bench is announced in a shocking public statement, and the story quickly makes national headlines. For Karoline, it's a bittersweet victory. She has achieved what she set out to do: expose the corruption and hold Grayson accountable. But she knows this battle is just one small piece of the larger fight for justice. As she stands on the courthouse steps, facing a crowd of reporters and supporters, Karoline delivers a final, powerful message. This is just the beginning. We've proven that one voice can make a difference, but we must keep pushing for change. Corruption is a disease, and we must cleanse our system, one step at a time. The fight for justice is far from over. With Grayson's removal and the ongoing investigations into judicial corruption, Karoline's influence continues to grow. She becomes a symbol of resistance, not only for her legal victory, but for her unwavering commitment to fighting for a better, fairer system. Her work doesn't stop with Grayson's downfall. Karoline now dedicates herself to pushing for systemic reform in the judicial system, advocating for transparency in all levels of government. Her platform grows as she begins speaking at major events, helping to shape national conversations around the need for judicial reform. Karoline becomes a respected figure in legal and political circles, with many seeking her input on issues of reform and accountability. As she sits in her office, preparing for her next big move, Karoline reflects on the journey she's been through. She was once a young attorney with big dreams, but now she's a leader of a national movement, one that has the power to change the course of history. The road ahead is still long, but Karoline knows that with the public's support, she can bring about the justice the system has long denied. The battle is not over, but she is more determined than ever to see it through. And as she looks out the window at the city below, she knows this is just the beginning. As the investigation into Grayson's actions deepens, shocking new revelations surface, further cementing the gravity of his corruption. It's not just Grayson, his influence stretches far deeper into the legal system than anyone could have imagined. The investigation uncovers a network of corrupt judges, lawyers, and even politicians who have been protecting each other and ensuring their financial and political power remains unchecked. Karoline's legal team uncovers a series of hidden accounts, kickbacks, and bribes linked to several high-profile cases that Grayson was involved in. These financial ties point directly to several influential figures who have been manipulating the justice system for personal gain, helping criminals evade justice in exchange for political and financial favors. The news breaks, sending shockwaves through the country. Karoline becomes the center of the investigation, leading the charge to expose this vast web of corruption. The media hails her as a hero, but Karoline remains focused on the task at hand. This isn't about fame or glory. It's about exposing a broken system that has allowed the powerful to trample over the powerless for far too long. Her victory over Grayson becomes the spark that ignites a larger movement, and her name is synonymous with a call for a complete overhaul of the judicial system. As new figures come forward with their own stories of being victimized by corrupt judges and legal professionals, the pressure on the entire system intensifies. In an unexpected twist, a former ally of Grayson, Judge William Hart, decides to speak out. Once a trusted confidant, Hart had turned a blind eye to Grayson's actions, but the mounting evidence and public outrage finally push him to confront the truth. Hart begins cooperating with investigators, offering crucial insider information that reveals the full scope of the corruption. Hart's testimony provides the final piece of the puzzle, linking several powerful figures to the corrupt network. He describes in detail how Grayson used his position to influence rulings, manipulate legal proceedings, and in some cases, intentionally sabotage cases for the benefit of criminal organizations. The information Hart provides is so damaging that it forces even the most powerful figures in the system to reconsider their allegiance to Grayson. For Karoline, this revelation is bittersweet. She had suspected that Grayson wasn't working alone, but the scope of the corruption still takes her by surprise. Hart's testimony not only brings Grayson closer to justice, but also reveals how deep the rot runs in the legal system. Karoline knows that exposing Grayson was only the first step. There's still much more work to be done. As the corruption scandal continues to unfold, the public's demand for justice becomes impossible to ignore. Karoline, now regarded as the face of legal reform, pushes for sweeping changes to prevent future abuses of power. She starts working closely with lawmakers and other reform advocates to draft legislation that would increase transparency in the judicial process, ensure stricter oversight, and eliminate the possibility of corrupt judges manipulating the system for their benefit. Her proposed reforms include mandatory disclosure of judges' financial interests, regular audits of judicial decisions, and the establishment of independent bodies to investigate allegations of misconduct. Karoline's team works tirelessly to gather evidence, conduct interviews, and build a case for comprehensive reform. The public rallies behind her, signing petitions, attending protests, and pressuring lawmakers to take action. The momentum for reform is building, but Karoline knows that it will take time. She remains undeterred, even as new obstacles and challenges arise. Some of the very figures responsible for the corruption fight back, using their political influence to delay or block her reforms. They attempt to discredit her by labeling her as an extremist or a threat to the legal system, but Karoline's resolve only grows stronger. The day Grayson has been dreading finally arrives, his day in court. As the trial begins, Karoline watches from the front row, her heart pounding in her chest. The courtroom is filled with anticipation. This is the moment when the full extent of Grayson's crimes will be laid bare for the world to see. Grayson, who once walked through the halls of the courthouse with an air of superiority, now faces the consequences of his actions. The proceedings are tense. Grayson's legal team continues to fight tooth and nail to maintain his innocence, but the evidence against him is overwhelming. Karoline's team presents witness after witness, each one offering damning testimony about Grayson's role in the corrupt network. The once untouchable judge now finds himself trapped, with no escape from the truth. The trial lasts for days, but the outcome is clear. Grayson's arrogance, his greed, and his disregard for the law have finally caught up with him. The judge's demeanor changes as the trial progresses, his bravado slowly fading as the evidence mounts. For the first time in years, Grayson begins to realize that he's not untouchable. As the judge reads the final verdict, guilty on all charges, the courtroom erupts in applause. The years of corruption, the broken lives, and the injustices Grayson helped perpetuate are now being accounted for. Karoline's face is a mix of relief and triumph, but she knows that this is just the beginning of a much larger battle. The fight for justice and accountability is far from over. In the wake of Grayson's conviction, the legal system begins to undergo a much-needed transformation. Karoline's work doesn't stop with one victory. She continues to lead the charge for legal reform, working with advocates, lawmakers, and the public to ensure that future generations are protected from the kind of corruption she fought so hard to expose. Her name becomes synonymous with a movement for judicial transparency and accountability, and her work sparks a nationwide conversation about the need for systemic change in every area of public life. The corrupt network that Grayson was a part of is dismantled, and new regulations and oversight mechanisms are put in place to prevent future abuses of power. Karoline's fight for justice reshapes the legal landscape, and she becomes a role model for anyone who believes that one person can make a difference. As she stands before a new generation of attorneys, activists, and reformers, she delivers one final message. This is not just about winning cases. It's about winning for the people who have no voice, for those who have been silenced by corruption. We are the change we seek. And with that, Karoline Leavitt's legacy is cemented, not just as an attorney who took down a corrupt judge, but as a leader who fought for a more just and accountable legal system for all.